Okay, awesome. So we, like a lot of outdoor school programs, we're interested to know not just what kids are learning, but how they're feeling about what they're learning and how they're feeling in general. And that is a moving target. It often changes over the course of the outdoor school experience. It can change from day to day and go up and down. It can change from minute to minute. And so we wanted to have a tool that helped us keep our finger on the pulse of how kids were doing. And we've gone through several iterations, and this is just one of several ways of getting data about student socio-emotional wellness and by extension socio-emotional learning and their competencies and supporting that. So I wanted to just share a couple of things, iterations that we've gone through in the last couple of years. Some of them may look familiar. We are not done. There's going to be a fourth iteration, but I have three to share. And then I would love feedback or questions that help us clarify maybe what that fourth iteration looks like. So prior to being more mindful about this, we have a morning circle each morning. We have an inquiry discussion at the end of each field study or lesson. We have a reflection circle at the end of each day. And during the circle time in the morning, I noticed in doing observations that some of our educators were very thoughtful about checking in with students about how they were feeling, their socio-emotional state. And doing that just by asking those questions or creating space for them to share. And it was highly variable. And so we wanted to standardize it a little bit so that each student and all students got that opportunity to share or not share if they wanted, and to create a safe, welcoming space that responded to individual student needs to the best of our ability. And so we wanted that. Why did we want it? We want it because we want to be responsive, number one. So if there's something that we can change about our program or the length of a lesson or where that lesson takes place or when we start, we're willing to change that during the outdoor school session. So we don't necessarily want to wait until the end of the season or even the end of the week or the end of the season to make those changes. If it's something that would help socio-emotional well-being for a student, we want to at least have the opportunity to have the information so that we can see if we can change that and respond to it in that moment in real time. So the first one was a variation of thumbs up and thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. And we did several different variations of that. And that was okay. It was a way to get all students get a check-in. I would say that some educators went above and beyond that, and we're still doing more and different kinds of strategies for check-in in that group setting in the morning circle. But at least we were kind of getting a basic finger on the pulse. However, there were some drawbacks with that. And one is that not everybody felt comfortable sharing in a group. I would probably say that there is a good chance that students were not answering honestly. In other words, the social pressure was a factor. If they're not feeling well and all of their friends around them are like thumbs up and they're really ebullient, they may not feel comfortable doing that. So imperfect, but it was a step in the right direction in terms of standardizing so that every student did get a check-in. This picture here with the cast or bandage on the hand and he's still giving the thumbs up is kind of what I imagine might be going on inside some students. So it's easy when someone has a cast or a bandage to say, thumbs up isn't really, I'm doing great, it's I'm surviving. And we didn't know because we can't see inside someone's brain or heart how many of them had a proverbial cast on their heart or their mind or both, and that the thumbs up was just surviving and not thriving. So it also was a little bit variable in terms of what kids, when they did give a sign, and let's make the assumption that it was accurate, they were actually talking about or indicating something that they truly authentically felt. What they meant by that, was it surviving or was it thriving? So we went to something that many educators have used or maybe created on their own, and Teachers Pay Teachers is full of all of these emoticon or emotional face charts. And so the kids, we pass around a laminated sheet. It had 6 to 12 faces on it. We started with emojis, then went to cartoon faces with different racial and ethnic and gender ID and gender non-binary faces represented. And then went to animal faces. And the same thing was true for all of them. They're sitting in a circle, they're looking at that sheet, and then they're still self-reporting in front of the group. So we did away with that in some cases. There were some vulnerable populations that we just knew that that might create additional trauma for them. And so we just asked them to look at the sheet and think about what they're feeling, but not necessarily report it. We didn't get that information, but it still helped them. We were hopeful it helped them in that self-awareness, one step leading the other to hopefully self-management. And part of self-management for us at Outdoor School is knowing when and how to access resources. So if it's a one-on-one conversation with their classroom teacher or one of our staff, if it's some time in our fox den with the low sensory area. And I liked the headphones that Karen mentioned. So accessing some of those resources and self-advocating as they feel comfortable would be one thing that we would love to create that space for them. And that awareness is that first step. So they're still looking at a sheet. They're still either not reporting at all and just thinking about it internally, or they're reporting out in front of their peers, which has pitfalls. They did, however, give more when they did share out, either in the group or one-on-one after the group, if we invited them to connect or talk with their classroom teacher who accompanies their cohort or one of our staff. We often have a socio-emotional support specialist there. This year it'll be a volunteer who's a psychologist, and she's retired, and she's going to be joining us to help out with that she's a safe adult and she's introduced as that, and that they can come and talk with her anytime. So regardless of how they're reporting, there was more nuance when they had more choices rather than the thumbs up, thumb sideways, thumb down. And we liked that. Still think that the choices that they had might have been influencing the socio-emotional states that they were selecting. And one case in point is a child who came in during midway in the year and was still getting to know his classmates, and I think chose and did say, tell our socio-emotional support specialist that he chose the emotion that he did because it was the only face that looked like him, not necessarily because it was the emotion that reflected how he felt. And he thought that was the assignment. Find, you need to have a match in who that looks like and also what kind of emotion. So we realized that it still had its limitations, especially if a student is a recent arrival in Oregon, or maybe emergent bilingual student. These may be more challenging and have some question marks for them. So the third iteration we did last year was animal tokens. I love manipulatives, especially for students that may be acquiring English, holding up a fur cone, and that's always a great gold standard. So how can we create that with this? And how can we create a little more privacy in that group setting? We can't have everyone go into their own cubicle or library space to answer these questions or to check in with themselves, but we can maybe create some more privacy. And so what we did is create little tokens or little wood slices or chips that have an animal face. That was by far the favorite of the three emojis, or the expressions, human expressions or the animal faces. It seemed to disarm and create a more safe, welcoming space. Students felt a little more relaxed. How do we know that? Our socio-emotional support specialist was there with us, and one of the things that they do is read the room. And so they're there to observe nonverbal cues as well as verbal cues, and they participate in our staff debrief. So one of the ways that we were able to kind of capture that is hearing from her about what that nonverbal body language was. Students were more relaxed, they had less hesitancy, they were more likely to share. And so there was something a little more engaging or disarming about the animal faces. So what that looked like is we'd take an animal face that embodied what we thought might be an emotion. This one, the seal, might be chill or sleepy or happy. and then took those wooden discs, cut the picture out, laminated it to the disc, and then put it in a bag. So each student got a little bag. There was something really precious and special about the students being able to look through the chips. They really enjoyed that, manipulating those. It did lengthen the time of our circle time a little bit. So I think 12 chips was a lot. I think we need to reduce it a little bit. And then they could drop one or more chips that they felt represented how they were feeling at that moment into a drop box that had opaque sides. And they were able to identify, be self-aware of their emotions. The limitation, we still didn't get that information. So it was anonymous. The students seemed in their body language and also in reporting in the survey and in one-on-one conversations seemed to feel more comfortable with that, particularly some students that um, may um, may have experienced trauma. And yet we still couldn't tie specific emotions with students. So what our socio-emotional support specialist did was collect the boxes, look through the chips after the students were gone in their field studies. So they were assured that no one would know, it's a private, what they chose, but we're looking for trends. And so if there was a box that had a whole lot of nervous chips or tired chips or bored chips, that might be a cohort that she wants to spend a little more time with, and maybe we want to talk about that and get some more information. So it's not the end all and be all, but it is an indication of, hey, there's maybe some more data that we need to explore. And so that's what it looks like. They each get a little velvet bag with those chips, and they can spend a couple minutes in silence just looking through the chips. And then that box is passed around. Nobody can see what chip they put in, or chips. A lot of times they put in multiple chips. And here were some of the ones that we used last year. So just a mix of what we might consider positive, neutral, sad, or negative. We can't represent everything. So last year, this was inspired in part because we had a homeschool session where two people went home from homesickness, and like we have to get a little bit more window into these kids, and so sad can stand in for that. And then here's another. So reducing those from 12 is going to be hard, but we need to do that. So it's, again, not a panacea, but it does give us a little more window. We've noticed that no one method or source can tell us the whole story of this student. It's hard to do that in a couple of days, but this is one tool that we found that is somewhat helpful. Yeah, that's a great question. Both. So from week to week, looking at how each group, and each, we all know each school group is different and has a unique thumbprint as a group. But looking at week to week, I can say as the teachers get more confident, as our educators get more confident, some of those socio-emotional check-ins tend to be more positive and less negative, and I'm not sure if that's just because the students are closer to the end of the school year, or our educators are just getting better about creating safe spaces for them to share and express. The socio-emotional support specialist is available for student behavioral support, one-on-one, really kind of tier 1, tier 2 kind of things, and particularly tier 2 that our educators might need to have a little bit more support with, and the classroom teachers are there too. So there's a whole group there that can kind of follow up, but we are looking, there were a couple of classrooms that were cohorts and they were emergent bilingual, and there were some things that were really helpful to know about looking at those chips. So a lot more students that chose nervous or anxious, and that was helpful to know so that we could create a little bit, some spaces where they could share that and also feel more comfortable. Yeah, I really like that. We're exactly tracking with you because these chips are more for helping students identify how they're feeling. Because I know when I was that age, I didn't know what I was feeling. It was a whole maelstrom of things, and it changed from minute to minute. And so helping them kind of be aware of it so that when there is a one-on-one or a check-in, and there are some students that the classroom teachers are going to be checking in with anyway throughout the day, and they've communicated, we have information about it. So there's support and there's data coming in that's not just the animal tokens. And I think that is critical, absolutely. And I love the idea of having some time where the classroom teacher can just talk or work with the students, because they have built that trust, and that's so important for all students, but particularly some students that are feeling or are vulnerable. I love that. Yeah, and those nonverbal cues, I know the classroom teachers, it's like a mom, anybody that's been a parent, I know Stephen knows this, the potty walk when they like, oh, this kid has to go to the bathroom right now. And we literally had that with a student that said thumbs up. This is when we were doing the thumbs up thing. And I'm like, this just doesn't feel like a thumbs up situation, and engage the classroom teacher. And it turns out that, that child's parent wasn't able to be there as a chaperone that day. They didn't feel comfortable. They'd never used a public restroom in a state park before, and they were holding their urine the entire day. And those nonverbal, the classroom teacher, once they were kind of focused in on that, they were like, yeah, we need to kind of check in with that student. So they are a really pivotal part of the thing.